Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivardhari. Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivardhari. Yashodanandana Vajjana Ranjana. Yashodanandana Vajjana Ranjana. Jamuna Tira Vanachari. Jamuna Tira Vanachari. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jai Om Stapad Paramahansa Parikacharya Ashtotra that Sri Srimad Divine Grace Srila A.C. Bhakti Vedanta Swami Prabhupada Ki Jai. ISKCON BBT Founder Acharya Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Jai Om Vishnupad Paramahansa Parikacharya Ashtotra that Sri Srimad Divine Grace Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur Ki Jai. Ananta Koti Vaishnavindra Ki Jai. Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur Ki Jai. Grantharaj Srimad Bhagavatam Ki Jai. Samaveta Bhaktavrinda Ki Jai. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to Shri Guru and Gauranga. Narayanam Namaskritya Narang chaiva narottamam Deving Saraswatim Vyasam Tato Jayamudiriyet. Before reciting the Srimad Bhagavatam, which is our very means of conquest, we should offer our respectful obeisances unto Lord Narayan, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, unto Narayan Rishi, the supermost human being, unto Mother Saraswati, the goddess of learning, unto Srila Vyasadeva, the author, and unto Srila Prabhupada, the translator, commentator, and our spiritual master. Nashta prayesha badreshu nityam bhagavata sevaya Bhagavatyuttama shloke Bhakti bhavati naishtaki. By regular attendance in classes on Srimad Bhagavatam and by rendering devotional service to the pure devotee, all that is inauspicious within the heart is destroyed almost to nil, and loving devotion to the Supreme Lord who is glorified in transcendental songs is established as an irrevocable fact. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. On this 5th day of December 2022 in San Diego, we're reading from Srimad Bhagavatam, translation and commentary by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. And we are studying Canto 6, Prescribed Duties for Mankind. Chapter 2, Ajamila delivered by the Vishnu Dutas. Text number 43. Hitva Kalevaram Tirte Gangayam Darshanad Anu Sadhya Swarupam Jagrehe Bhagavat Parshavartinam Hitva Kalevaram Tirte Gangayang Darshanadanu Sadhya Swarupam Jagrehe Bhagavat Parshavartinam Hitva Kalevaram Tirte Gangayam Darshanaranu Sadhya Swarupam Jagrehe Bhagavat Parshavartinam Hitva Kalevaram Tirte Gangayang Darshanadanu Sadhya Swarupam Jagrehe Bhagavat Parshavartinam Hitva Kalevaram Tirte Gangayam Darshanadanu Sadhya Swarupam Jagrehe Bhagavad Parshavartinam Hitva Kalevaram Tirte Gangayang Darshanaranu Sadhya Swarupam Jagrehe Bhagavad Parshavartinam Hitva Kalevaram Tirte Sadhyak Swarupam Jagrehe Bhagavat Parshavartinam Hitva Kalevaram Tirte Gangayam Darshanaranu Sadhya Swarupam Jagrehe Bhagavat Parshavartinam Hitva Kalevaram Tirte Gangayam Darshanadanu Sadhyak Swarupam Jagrehe Bhagavat Parshavartinam. Ladies. Hitva Kalevaram Tirte Gangayang darshanaranu Sadyaswarupam jagrehe Bhagavat Parshavartinam. You want to try? Hitva kalevaram tirte Gangayam darshanaranu Sadyak swarupam jagrehe Bhagavat Parshavartinam Vrinda. Hitva kalevaram tirte Gangayang darshanaranu Sadyak swarupam jagrehe Bhagavat Parshavartinam. Hitva, giving up, kalevaram, the material body, tirte, in the holy place, Gangayam, on the bank of the Ganges, darshanat anu, after seeing, sadyaha, immediately, swarupam, his original spiritual form, jagrehe, he assumed, Bhagavat Parshavartinam, which is fit for an associate of the Lord. Translation. Upon seeing the Vishnu Dutas, Ajamila gave up his material body at Hardwar on the bank of the Ganges. He regained his original spiritual body, which was a body appropriate for an associate of the Lord. Purport. The Lord says in the Bhagavad Gita 4:9, you can all chant together, Janma karma cha me divyam evang yo veti tatpataha chakva deham punar janma naiti mameti sorjanam. Very good. One who knows in truth the transcendental nature of my appearance and activities does not, upon leaving the body, take his birth again in this material world, but attains my eternal abode, O Arjuna. The result, close quote, the result of perfection in Krishna consciousness is that after giving up one's material body, one is immediately transferred to the spiritual world in one's original spiritual body to become an associate of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Some devotees go to Vaikuṇṭhaloka, and others go to Goloka Vṛndāvana to become associates of Krishna. Om Jnana Timirandasya Jnanandana Salakaya Chakshu Unmilitam Mena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. I was born in the darkest of ignorance, but my spiritual master Srila Prabhupada opened my eyes with the torchlight of knowledge. I offer my humble obeisances unto him and to all members of Sri Parampara, the disciplic succession. So, talk about a happy ending. This is such a relatable story, should be for us. And we remember the purports that Prabhupada was writing, how all members of the Krishna consciousness movement should remember where they were and how they've been delivered. Basically, he said something like that, right? We should remember the state that we were in. And why is it so important to remember that? Because, again, we return to this theme of gratitude, of feeling so thankful to the spiritual master for making the effort of seeking us out, undergoing all the austerities, Srila Prabhupada and also many of his followers and role as spiritual masters and every devotee who's sincere preacher, to risk so many things in order to give this knowledge by which one can be delivered. There's no other reason for that, going everywhere and making all that effort. And there's no other form of salvation. We can see in the modern world how so much havoc is created by what they call misinformation. Now, there's a difference between misinformation and disinformation. Misinformation is intentional spreading of lies for some reason, for some motive, personal motive. Disinformation, it can be a mistake. So, this whole world is built on misinformation. this Maya Devi is tasked with the mission of keeping us in illusion, of keeping she's like a big con artist. You know what a con artist is? Someone who promises you something sincerely and has perfected the way of presenting it so that that sincerity comes through loud and clear, even though it's false. See? So that for some personal gain. And it's the whole material world is built on it. All of, capitalism, but then I found communism is also, it's all built on lies, because when one comes to the position of power, whether it's financial power, political power, any kind of sway over other human beings, the natural tendency is to exploit that for personal gain. You see? So even though there may be so many highfalutin principles and so forth in the founding document or whatever you want to call it, or the laws, still it comes down to foundation on human beings' character. And the character of the conditioned soul is that he has a tendency to be overwhelmed by the material modes of nature. And we read in the Bhagavad Gita how the more that the mode of passion and ignorance is influencing you, the more that you're self-centered, and the more that you're willing to exploit others. And so this is the way the material energy is set up. And we learn right at the beginning of the second canto. Now the Bhagavatam kind of has this two stages. The whole first canto is kind of an introduction and has very important instructions. But it's kind of telling you how the Bhagavatam came to be. And how does the Bhagavatam end? What the first canto end? You remember? Pariksit sits down on the bank. Right? All of that leads to that. And Shukadeva is now going to be speaking the Bhagavatam. So, and the key question that he asks is, what should one do? What should one think about? What should one hear as death approaches? And our commentators, Srila Prabhupada, following the commentators, and we're all in that position. We don't know how long we have to live, especially in this crazy Kali Yuga when there could be bombs falling out any time. Tsunamis, droughts. We're in like a 1,000-year drought here right now, I mean, it's always tenuous. Life in this is like a drop of water on a lotus leaf in the river. So we're all in that position of facing imminent death, certainly at one point, immediately or after some time, but it's all going to come. So this is such an important question. And he answers famously. First he praises the question. Right? Does anyone know the verse? Vadiyana ishate prashna. Vrinda, you know this one, right? Not yet. Okay. You should learn it. Vadiyana ishate prashna Kṛtoloka hitang nipa atmavet samadang bhangsam shota vyadashi yak prashu. I think that's like that. My verses are starting to have holes in them. But Vadiyana ishate prashna, very nice question. Very nice question. Both this is good for the speaker and good for the listener. And it's approved by all the sages as a very wonderful question. Because it's for the benefit of everybody. We're all faced with that, and this is a question, what should one do for one's ultimate benefit? And then he has a few verses describing the alternative. This is an even more famous verse. Shrota vyadina rajendra ninang santi sahasrisha apashyatam atma tattvam griheshu grihamedinam. So those who are materialistic individuals, householders, materialistic householders, completely in the illusion, they have millions of things to hear. And it's been expanded and multiplied unlimitedly by the internet. I mean, when I was growing up, we'd have newspapers, would come once a day, Time magazine I used to read once a week. Yes, you'd have the evening news on the TV if you're really into it, But not this constant bombardment of unlimited varieties of things that you can get lost in, And in being interested in those things, you become vulnerable to someone who's trying to get you to buy something, In other words, there's so many, it's such a more heavy and influential atmosphere that we live in now, where the modes can be so effective in, illusioning. So what he says, there's thousands and millions of things to hear, as we know. And Prabhupada expands on that in wonderful purport. Very beginning of the second canto, or like the second verse of the first chapter of the second canto. And so he goes on to describe in a few verses what most people's lives are, especially in this Kali Yuga. He says, Nidriyariyate naktam, vibhayena chabhavayak, divachardehe rajam, kutumba baranenava. Here's how people spend their lives, completely influenced under these modes in the Kali Yuga. At night, sleep too much. Or they spend their life, having a sex life. During the day, where's money? Where's money? Where's money? And the weekend, Prabhupada uses this word, I heard him going shopping. To support the kutumba. Kutumba is the children and the whole family, So, and then if somehow a vacation, we'll take everybody, have a good time, spend more money, go into debt, whatever. So it's a life of illusion. And now, in this life, it's danger. There's so much danger. So we need soldiers to protect us. Deha, patra, kalatradishu, atmasainyeshu, asatsvapi. Tesham bhamato nadadam pashyan apina pashyati. This last line here practically characterizes our whole situation affected by Maya, illusion by Maya. So he says, okay, first got the body. Keep the body strong. Go to the gym. Try to keep it strong. Deha, apatya, the children, the wife, etc. Expansion. These are our atma sainya. That's the soldiers to protect the self. You see? But there are satsu. They're fallible. They're also can be destroyed by the material energy. We're trusting in the body, but that's pretty stupid, isn't it? I mean, we all have experience. You live in this world for a little time, and something happens. I still remember to this day a traumatic accident I had right in the home. It wasn't like outside or anything. Somehow or other, I spilled a cup of boiling hot milk or tea or something on my arm. And I was just a little kid. I was screaming, My father said, okay, I think he put butter on it or something. Anyway, he was trying to soothe the pain, like that. And it was just such a shock. It's always a shock when the body, suddenly something happens and it doesn't work like it's supposed to. You learn in old age, gradually things don't work like they used to. So this is the situation we're all in. It's a fallible soldier. You're protecting your existence here, but it's doomed. It's doomed to disease, doomed to old age or injury or destruction somehow or another. And all the other soldiers you're relying on. It was the wife, the family, the children, the relatives, the life insurance, the health insurance, the multi-trillion-dollar defense department we built up in America. Who can hurt us, Oh my God. They also have one over there. They can also have the bombs. What are we going to do? It's just one illusion after another. So, it is a tremendous symptom of illusion. This is the world we live in. So what's the solution? So he recommends there, he says, Tasmat Bharata Sarvatma Bhagavan Ishvaro Hari Shotavyak Kititavyascha Smartavyak Chechitabhyam. If you desire fearlessness at the time of death, that's the last words of the verse. Cha ichita abhayam. And we should all desire that. Because this fear is a symptom of illusion. When we turn away from Krishna, I've chanted in Sanskrit so many times, Bhayam dutiya binaveshitaksya ishadapetasya viparyo asmriti. The whole problem is we turned away from Krishna. We wanted to be like Krishna. We wanted to be in his position of the enjoyer, the controller, the master, like that. And so we can't do that if we're in the spiritual world and if we're worshiping Krishna, so we turn our back on Krishna. That's what this means. What does it say? Ishadapetasya, turning away from the Isha. And what happens? We get absorbed in material energy. That's what it's here for, to give us the chance to act like God, to see the craziness of that, and to ultimately become enlightened by those who are his emissaries here, by the book like Bhagavad Gita or whatever. It's a chance. But meanwhile, if we want to stay illusion, we can go on life after life after life. So what's the solution to this? not to try to take shelter of the fallible soldiers. Anything immaterial cannot protect the soul. The soul is spirit, and all these material things simply give you the illusion of safety, the illusion of pleasure, and we've been doing it in this illusion for millions of births. So those who are wise, who have bought a full set of Bhagavatams and have come to the second canto, or simply come in touch with any of the books of Srila Prabhupada, they become curious, they become intrigued. You know, it's rare that someone immediately, like Vijay Prabhu told the story last night, where oh, this is it, Bhagavad Gita, and then let me join, you know, it means previous life, obviously. But even if this is our first life in a long time, when we come in touch with this, then we're fortunate if we become interested. The whole thing is the interest. Where do you place your attention? And inquiry. Tato Brahma Jigyasa. This is the very first a sutra in the Vedanta Sutra. And it is an injunction. It says one could inquire not into all these other things, but into Brahman, into the absolute truth. Where did everything come from? What is my position in relation to it? In other words, all of the inquiries that are answered in Srila Prabhupada's books. So, Parikshit has certainly come to that point. I mean, it was engineered so that this Bhagavatam would be, but he is now all ears, so to speak. You know, is it all ears? He's not letting his mind wander. Every minute counts. So here he's getting the instruction. This one instruction, if this is as far as you get in the Bhagavatam, this will take you back to Godhead. So what did he say? Tasmat bhata, therefore, you know, therefore. It means these verses that begin with therefore are always quite conclusive. It's good focusing on. Bharata, O exalted descendant of King Bharat. Sarvatma, he gives 4 definitions of the absolute truth here. Sarvatma, Bhagavan, Ishvara, Hari. So there's no doubt about it. Sarvatma is the super soul. Bhagavan, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Ishvara, the Supreme Controller. And Hari, he who takes away all your misery and your heart. Okay, that's Hari. So what should we do about that? Here, Shotavya, first element. Shotavya, Kirtitavyascha, and chant. Shravanam, Kirtanam, Vishnu. And Smartavya, and remember. Cha ichitabayam, if you want fearlessness at the time of death. So if we can simply follow that program, then we can achieve the next verse. Etavad. Now when you see a verse, there are a whole, I picked them out one time, there's like at least a dozen, that begin with this word, etavad. It's always a memorable verse. It's always like a summary verse. I'll give a few samples. This one is right here. Etavad janma sapalyam swadharma parinishteya janma lava padakpungsam. Who knows the last line? Ante narayana smriti. Many devotees know that one line. This is the essence. To remember Narayan, Krishna at the time of death. What does Krishna say? We all together now? Antakale cha mameva smoran mukva kalevadam yakpriyati samanbhavam yastinatra sangshayaha. The Bhagavad Gita, essential verse. For one, antakale. What's antakale? End time. It's your end time. It's the end of your life. Antakale cha mameva. Krishna, me. Smadan mukva. And when you give up kalevanam, here's the same word is used. He's giving up his body, right? So when giving up the body, at the time of death, if you can remember me, says Krishna, you'll come to me without doubt. And not, and you'll be back home, back to Godhead. So the same idea is in this. Aitavad janmasapalyam, the fruit of your birth, the real fruit. You make your birth fruitful. Krishna uses the same words when he's speaking to his friends. He's wandering in the forest and he's praising the trees. Maybe we'll get to that one too. That's another Etavad verse. Etavad janmasa swadharma parinishtiya. Whether you're just, in varnashram, or you're a yogi, whatever it is you may be. Parinishtiya. Janmalabhak padangpungsam. You'll have the real benefit of your birth, supreme benefit, if you can remember Narayan at the end of life. Because then that's exactly what Ajamila did, right? He remembered Narayan, and he needed a little more time. So it was at the end of his life, but then he had to purify a little more up in hard war. And when he was completely fixed, and all the crud had been eliminated from his mind, he's totally thinking of the form of the Lord. He knew his own Sarup Siddhi, Then it was time to go back, and the same Vishnu Dutas came back to pick him up. So this is the goal. And this is the information that Srila Prabhupada is giving throughout his books. You read the introduction to the Bhagavad Gita, right? It isn't long before you start reading that where he starts talking about the 5 rasas. You remember that? It's quite remarkable. That whole intro, it's nice to understand the circumstance how some of these books were written, Prabhupada didn't know, at least externally, what was going to happen. So he's sitting up there, up in, the history, where he was uptown for I don't know how many, it was months, at least 6 months, with Dr. What was his name? Mishra? Yeah, at his yoga studio. And after a while, Dr. Mishra saw the threat that Prabhupada was having. He was going to entice his disciples because Prabhupada was preaching. They become attracted. So, well, you can't live here anymore. You can live at my office, basically. So he was living in an office some blocks away. So he got, I don't know how, somehow someone gave him a reel-to-reel tape recorder. I don't know if you've ever seen those. They're quite clunky and heavy, but they can make nice recordings. So Prabhupada found how to use it, and he recorded this introduction to the Bhagavad Gita. And it's a remarkable document. The whole recording is extant. Now, he was robbed there. Someone came and stole, probably the superintendent, who had access. And he came, that's what Prabhupada said, but he couldn't prove it. So he came and stole that thing, which maybe was worth $100 at that time, which is a lot of money. But he left the tape that Prabhupada made, the most valuable thing. He recorded this whole, it's hours long, it's 3 hours long, and that whole introduction, you read it, it's quite, voluminous and detailed. So Prabhupada he said, if you read that thing, you get a pretty good lesson in Krishna consciousness. Because Prabhupada didn't really know exactly what the future held and how it would be, at least this will be there, so that became the introduction to the Gita that we have. So he goes through there, he quotes this Antakali Tama, I think several times in there, and he describes, and at the end, the glory of the Gita. These verses, just a little history on the editing. I mean, devotees who knew Sanskrit, from this motley crew that he met down in the Lower East Side. So, the history? I mean, it's actually miraculous the way these books started to come out. First of all, he's situated finally in 26 2nd Avenue, out of the loft on the Bowery, which is like the first place. That was amazing. So Michael Grant, Mukunda Maharaj came, and he was really together. He was a professional musician, and a lot of the guys were musicians at first. And so they appreciated the kirtan, and the kirtans must have been pretty nice, singing and everything. So then he needed to find another place. It's a whole history. He had a roommate, Prabhupada, and his roommate was taking LSD. Now, Prabhupada had high hopes for him. He was going to teach him Sanskrit, and everything. What was it? I forget his name now. Was it Paul? I forget. But he had a bad trip. And Prabhupada looked at him, and he was looking at Prabhupada with, like eyes like he was going to harm him, like maybe kill him, So Prabhupada ran down the stairs. Luckily, he was so untogether that he couldn't follow him. But now he's on the street alone. Stuff was all upstairs. He has nowhere to go. Luckily, he had the phone number. He was able to call another friend, Carl, who was initiated as Karlapati. He had a girlfriend and everything in an apartment, but Prabhupada needed, so he moved in with him. And that was a little awkward because the lady wasn't really into Krishna consciousness, and she, Prabhupada was kind of put some clamps on their freedom, so-called. So it was urgent that they find a place. So they asked Mukunda, who knew the Lower East Side. So immediately he went to the Village Voice, which is a famous paper. Now it's defunct at that time. And he knew that as soon as it's printed, you look at the listings of the places you want. And go right away because they're in such great demand. Anyway, that's how we found 26 2nd Avenue. So then there was a caravan. They moved Prabhupada's stuff all the way to the 26th. So he set up there, And then a few days later, Prabhupada's walking on the street and he sees the professor of English to edit his books. Come on, that's not a miracle. So there's Hayagriva, the first editor. And that was, if you read the original books, you see that, it was really important that there be an editor, and Prabhupada knew that. So anyway, that was the history, and he started editing. But what did he know? He didn't know Sanskrit. And then gradually, so in the middle, and Prabhupada was typing everything with 2 fingers, Okay. So Gargamuni, he was one of the early. He was wandering around, and he saw in maybe a used shop or electronics something. He saw this dictating machine. I said, this would be great. Prabhupada could just dictate. It'd be a lot faster. So yeah, Prabhupada was into it, and they taught him how to use it. Actually, there's another miracle. Somehow he knew how to use it right away. How does that happen? But then nobody knew how to type very well somehow, so what's going to happen? So who walks into the store? You should read the Lilamrita. He's not a bhakta. He's not really interested in Krishna. He's a student, and he's taking a summer course. He was given permission to study a new religion, and he picked the Hare Krishnas, because we become a little famous by that time. So he walks in, he knocks on the door in the storefront, and I forget his name. Does anyone remember his name? Neil. Thank you. So, no one called him Bhakta Neil. He was Neil the typist, because he wasn't really a Bhakta. They asked him, you know how to type? Oh yeah, I know how to type really good. And so, can you know this dictating machine? Yeah, I can operate it. So it was like, Krishna sent, The next miracle was they're making the record, and the guy arrives in the morning with the night before with the mridanga. Where's he going to get a mridanga on the Lower East Side? I know where he got it, because I lived on the Lower East Side in 1968. There was an Indian music store with all kinds of Indian music instruments, because it was becoming popularized, Ravi Shankar and Beatles, So anyway, he came. So Prabhupada said, let me see that. And Prabhupada started playing expertly, and devotees, another miracle. Prabhupada, beautiful beats, But it was the guy's drum, so they had to give it back to him. Said, we're going to make this record tomorrow. Can you bring it back tomorrow morning? And I said, I'll never come back. He did. He brought it back, and that's what's on the record. It really adds a lot. Anyway, so all these things are happening, and from the beginning, what I'm just emphasizing here is the whole gift that Prabhupada gave. Not just the knowledge. The knowledge is essential, the foundation. And it's there in the books, and we know it's so essential. But as well, his own example of living the knowledge, which is so important. Because without that, who would take up the process? There needed to be someone who was an exemplar, who was teaching, who was exemplifying the purity and the bliss and the knowledge, and Prabhupada was, that in spades. So this is the way things started. And as time went on, I was very fortunate, I always say Krishna sent me there, to join at that time and at that place, so that I could do my little thing with the editing, my specialty is fault finding. And Krishna engaged me in a service, so I can just find faults for Krishna, in these manuscripts. Sometimes I'd be meditating, is this an italic comma or not? It should be italic, little things like that, So anyway, the history of book production is also quite amazing, and I'm not going to get into it, but in detail. But the whole thing fits together as Krishna's way of giving us a chance, just like Ajamila got his second chance, right? And someone told me, Vijay told me, I never read this, must be in another Purana, that some sage instructed him to name his last son Narayan. I never heard that before. But so, that was essential. He was so affectionate to his son Narayan. Who knows what the other names were that he gave him. He had 10 sons, that's in the Bhagavatam. But Narayan, he's calling Narayan, come over, he's elderly, and come over and sit on my lap, take your food, whatever, sing to me, whatever. So when the time came, what's he going to do? He's going to call out in desperation to Narayan. So that was Krishna's favor on him. And we've also been favored in so many ways by, these temples. There's a series of photographs. Purusha, who's been here forever, since the 70s. He's really a treasure. He's the photographer, and he takes care of the newsletter. And he found he has a trove of archival photographs, and some of them show how this temple was put together. It was just a warehouse when they got it, And Gunagrai Maharaj was at that time married to a lady who was a professional designer. And I think she went to India to study all these forms and shapes and, things like that. And took him a year to create all these models and paint and all of these things. And here we're benefiting from their service. This is a nice way to meditate. how appreciation for the devotees. Today, we have the Pujari department and the cooks and we're all depending on each other and benefiting from each other's service to Krishna. So sometimes I like to just look at this temple when I'm chanting and seeing all the different factors and how much we're enjoying, we're benefiting from the service of so many other devotees. I'll tell you, I lived with these artists, because I was part of the press in LA, and they worked so hard to put these, to make these paintings, and you can see how they got more and more expert as time went on. And Prabhupada loved these paintings. He's windows to the spiritual world, because you can contemplate them and be reminded of Krishna's pastimes, Lord Ram, there's Lord Chaitanya. And if you're really appreciative, you can say, what a wonderful service and what a wonderful gift it is for the whole world. These paintings are unique in spiritual preaching. So we've been given so much, and this is the special season where we can make a special effort to give the blessing to others. The books go out. It's almost like, I compared it. Have you ever heard of Johnny Appleseed? I'm sure you haven't heard of him. Probably not, right, Vinda? Okay. So Johnny Appleseed, he was he lived like, I don't know, maybe early 1800s, something like that, in America. I think he's on Long Island. And somehow his wife died or something, and he took what we would call, this one was like taking sannyas. He wanted to do good for others, so he decided, I'm going to plant these trees. Now this is a Vedic form of charity, to plant trees, right? The fruit trees. So at that time, there's a part of New York that's known for northern New York, where there's a lot of apples growth, and also in Oregon. They need a little cool weather and everything like that. So he went around just throwing the seeds out where, he could figure, well, this looks like a good place, maybe they'll take it. But the vast majority never took root or whatever happened, But enough of them did that in northern New York, it's famous for a place that's where a lot of orchards are, for apple orchards. And it's just like, distributing books. These are seeds. If a plant grows and turns into a tree, it will produce the fruits, and also other seeds will grow, and it can become, and the gift just keeps expanding. So Srila Prabhupada was like that with his books, and Bhaktisiddhanta, he was 100% into that, book distribution, because they're like seeds. Sometimes they don't fructify right away. We've heard of books staying on a shelf for years, and then finally being pulled off. What was it, that fellow in Burma, Myanmar, who just wanted to learn English? And that was the only English book that his father had on the shelf. He reads the book and becomes interested, intrigued. I think with Bhakti Vikas Swami, who went there and he could only stay 3 days. Just like Prabhupada, he started a movement in Russia. He initiated one devotee, right? One guy came and he was listening for 3 days. So it's like that. It's like multi-level. I was thinking of the multi-level marketing, isn't it? Where you sell something, but really you recruit others to sell, and then they're part of your downline. So you benefit from whatever they sell also. And similarly like that, it's a big pyramid, So similarly, you distribute books, right? And a certain number of them, may fall on, a stone. They don't really, take to them, at least not right away. Some of them are discarded, let's face it. But some, they people become interested, they may become devotees, and themselves book distributors. That's your downline. You're getting credit for all the service that's being done because of your influence like that, So it's another incentive to distribute. So it's a chance to try to really repay Prabhupada, or try to repay. We can never repay for all that he's done and all that his sincere followers, not like me, who have done to really maintain and spread the movement. And it's always the same thing. This Second Chance book. I'll tell you how the Second Chance book came about. Each book has its own little history, The Second Chance book came about because Prabhupada was traveling in India. I don't think the book hadn't been printed yet. We have that famous thing where it said Narayan, Narayan, Narayan. You remember that? When that comes up in the book. And they're reading, and he uttered, he's being, threatened by these Yamadutas about to pull out. He cries out, Narayan, Narayan, Narayan. And Prabhupada asks, is it say 3 times? That's what the manuscript says, Prabhupada. Said, no, once is sufficient. So that was changed in the manuscript when it's printed in the book. It was never printed in the book with 3 Narayans. But Prabhupada may have said that at first, and he changed his mind. So Prabhupada's traveling around giving lectures on these, but even though it's not printed, it was such an important topic on these very chapters that we just read now. For 1, 2, and I think goes into 3 with the instructions of Yamaraj, very important coming up. And at the end of this coming attractions, he has an Etavan verse, which kind of ends the whole episode. Etavan evilokesmun pungsang dharma parasmitaha bhakti yogo bhagavati tannama gohanari bi. Etavan evilokesmin, for all human beings in the world, pungsang dharma parasmitaha, the supreme dharma is, guess what? Yes, devotion to the Supreme Personality. Bhakti Yoga Bhagavati, beginning with the chanting of the holy name. That's in there, in the last. Tannama Grahana Adibi. Grahana Adibi means beginning with that and going to all other things. So that's an important instruction, and he has very many more important instructions into his duties, and also Shukadeva Goswami has a very important instruction summarizing the importance of chanting the holy name. So so he's traveling around giving, and of course the recordings are being made, and I think it was Hansadutta who thought, this could be made into a book. Now he was in charge of Germany, so he didn't really have so many English, typists and writers, but he put it together, and he found an English editor. And so that was the basic form of the book. When it came to, but he wasn't able to publish it as such. But when it finally came to our attention in LA, I was working with the BBT during the 75 through 78 there. And it was at that time. And the manuscript came, and I remember, we had some transcripts of Prabhupada's lectures there. But when you make these books, sometimes you have to, take things out, put things together. There's this whole thing. And I told Shesha, who was then the BBT trustee, he was the BBT trustee at that time, I can't vouch for tracing every word in this book back to a word in Prabhupada's lectures. But there's nothing bona fide. No, the philosophy is there. It's all bona fide philosophy. So that, anyway, that's it. So I said we should print it. And it's been printed that way, and it's perfectly fine. This was, it might have been 77, it could have been 76, something like that. No, he didn't write it. He just arranged for it to be transcribed and then edited by somebody. And I had to just, fix up the things a little bit, just how I usually do. And that's how it came out. But it's such an important lesson, this idea that it's life, it's a redemption story. But we're all redemption stories, isn't it? and people are attracted by that because I think deep down inside we know that they need help. There's so many troubles and things, And you explain, yes, this is a second chance to achieve perfection, just like he's just achieved perfection here, being reinstated in his original form in the spiritual world. So this is completely unknown to people. People are living lives of complete ignorance, striving something that ultimately will turn to dust, which is success or happiness or security in this world. It isn't there. It's just like I began. Maya's job is to delude us. It's probably a thankless task, but there are always representatives of Krishna. Krishna comes himself. There's these wonderful books which are also Krishna. When you read the Bhagavad Gita, you're associated with Krishna. You're hearing him, and you should really feel that and feel awed by that wonderful opportunity. And that's one of the reasons Prabhupada would so much emphasize the Sanskrit. I'll tell you, when you if you look at these books, like I have a set of Bhagavatams on my shelf, just to let you know why. There was a translation of the Srimad Bhagavatam published by Gita Press before, maybe 72, something like that. And it's 2 volumes.
12 cantos in 2 volumes. How is that possible? We had, and they're not these big 1,000, page volumes. They're maybe 500, 600. Because all there is in there is the original Sanskrit, Devanagari, and the translation. When you put the transliteration and the synonyms and the purports in, which makes it potent, it can transform your life, if it's done by a pure devotee, then it adds tremendously to the size of the book. But Prabhupada wanted that. He wanted to give us a chance to be able to chant the Sanskrit and to know. He didn't expect us all to become Sanskrit scholars, but if you have accurate transliteration and purports, transliteration and synonyms and translation, then you can begin to get, learn how to chant the mantras and to appreciate, to really understand. It's a different level. There's a tremendous potency in the language. He knew that. That's why he said, even if you can't understand, you should also hear. Continue to hear. Just like he, in his experience with the spiritual master, he said it was hard to understand sometimes. It was such exalted philosophy, but he was so eager to hear. And famously his spiritual master agreed to initiate him. Yes, I have marked him. He's very eager to hear. And so, we're at, beneficiaries for all that Prabhupada went through and all that's come before. And all that Prabhupada requested is that we try to hand it off to others, that we try to make others as fortunate we are. First, we should appreciate the great fortune. That's those who attend Mangalartik, the very first emotion should be great gratitude. Sangsara dava nalida loka tranaya. We're also lidha. Oh, I've got to remember. Whoops. Okay, a few minutes. We're also lidha, suffering in this world, although you may not know it all the time. You know it enough, right? Tranaya. He's delivering, just like a cloud of mercy, raining down, putting out that forest fire, right? All good qualities. So our hearts should overflow with thankfulness and gratitude to Srila Prabhupada for making that effort and executing it. And so we're beneficiaries, we're appreciating to one degree or another. And we should try to make others fortunate. That's the simple motivation for the Sankirtan mission, and it's going to go on as long as there's ISKCON. 10,000 years, that mission will be there, and give others a chance. And what happens, to this world? I mean, we know it's for 10,000 years. We're supposed to have a age of Lord Chaitanya, and it's hard to see it, but what can we see? Who knows? Maybe this Vladimir Putin will read a book and become a sold-out bhakta.
He got a book already.
He got a book. Well, maybe he'll actually read it. Maybe I'm going to write him. And who knows? I mean that. So that could be the redemption of the world, But our job is simply to, try to sincerely do our part and make others fortunate. Give the books out, learn the books, live the books, live in it. As my little mantra, live to give is great, But learn it, Bhagavad Gita, T-shirt, learn it, live it, give it. That's all in there. We have 2 minutes. Any questions, comments? Yes, Govardhan Prabhu. Where's our mics? You have one right there. All right, he's already got it.
Krishna, thank you.
Govardhan.
In the beginning of your class, you mentioned con artists.
Yes.
Sometimes on book distribution, you meet nice people, and then sometimes you meet not nice so people. And I remember I was trying to hand flyers. And this man, he started yelling at me. He said, "You're a con artist." He said, "You should stop giving these books out." He was a little intoxicated. And the other thing I wanted to say was, you were talking about redemption.
He doesn't have much time. Let him answer that one.
Well, yeah. I mean, this is when you're in illusion, then you see the truth as a good example of illusion. This is the idea, is that people are backwards, upside down. So, what are you going to say?
I have different lines, and this idea of redemption, I tell people, this is not a book, this is an opportunity to become a better person, to help others, to make a difference in someone's life. And that's like the missing, or that's like the selling point, I guess. I know I want to be a better person, I want to help others, I want to make a difference, like that. So
It's brilliant. Do we have time for Saul? Okay, good. Yeah.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
So you mentioned earlier in the middle of the class, it's through our past lives where we take the devotional service, even if it takes such amount of times. And then you also mentioned this Bhakti Neil or Nate, that brought the Mridanga.
Yeah, it wasn't about the Neil the typist.
Yeah, Neil the typist. It says in the Nectar of Devotion, to take up the devotional service, it's either about the grace of a pure devotee or past life activities. So why is it sometimes that some people don't take devotional service at all, even if they come in contact with a pure devotee?
Free will. There's always the free will of the individual. Like we all made a decision, right? You were coming up here from Imperial Beach so many weeks, you know. And I said, is he going to join? Is he going to join? And then I saw, oh, you know, it's serious. But you could have any time decide. And we know, unfortunately, even after years, you can decide, well, you know, because if you become offensive, if you offend devotees, it becomes very difficult to stay with devotees. And very difficult to, you know, to be with the deities. Krishna is letting us, he's encouraging us. If he sees that we're disturbances and that we're offended. So there's a whole bunch of things, but basically it's built on the free will of every living entity. So that's what I get. Thank you for listening. All glories to Srila Prabhupada. Hari Hari Bol.